Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and a new Elden Ring Dex tier list video for patch 1.09. With the patch we have lots of things changed, and actually a good amount of things have changed in regards to the Dex rankings. Important buffs and nerfs to say PvP specific stuff, but also quite a lot of general changes too. Here is the tier list, and as you can see we actually have D this time because there's quite a lot of weapons. We want to give it a fair ranking. If it is on this list though, I do think it's a good weapon. We're just comparing them to one another. With that said, let's start from the bottom with a new addition to the list, the Serpent Bone Blade. Katanas have been improved this patch. With improved running attack speed and reduced attack recovery, the combinations of attacks are much nicer. This weapon comes with a unique heavy where you sort of swipe twice really quickly, and it has deadly poison. The potential of dealing good damage in bursts and getting some deadly poison off on the target and dealing good damage with that is certainly nice in say PvP or throughout a fight in PvE against a boss. It's also fair to say that the damage scaling of this weapon is quite low. The output of the weapon is going to be a lot lower than say a neutral katana that you can run with any affinity and better ashes. But as a poison weapon and as a dex weapon, it is pretty cool and neat and can be used for unique builds and clever PvP play. But now let's talk about weapons that have fallen down in the ranking, starting with the Dragon King Cragblade and putting it all the way down in D. Having used this patch, it's not doing so good. It feels like heavy thrusting swords over the last few patches have been continuously nerfed and reduced in power. For any thrusting weapon, the major nerf of counterattack damage in PvP is a nasty one, but heavy thrusting swords specifically have had their movesets and power levels reduced. And again in 1.09, that's happened once more. They've decreased the hitbox size for some of the attacks for heavy thrusting swords, so the phantom range and the reach of these weapons is worse. I found that the damage isn't feeling great, the range is feeling worse, and what was strong about these weapons and weapon types just isn't as good anymore. I think this is an over nerf to this weapon type due to Bloody Hellis being so good, so I hope to see some maybe Dragon King Cragblade specific buffs in the future. Also down on the list then is another thrusting sword. This one's the S-Stock. Just like heavy thrusting swords, the thrusting swords have also had hitbox changes where they're smaller now. And again, the PvP specific reduced thrusting weapon counterattack damage, this weapon type is just taking a hit. Where the S-Stock was nice was in a build where you've got it in offhand to suddenly use it to change up the speed of your attack and catch people with its nice phantom range. With that being reduced, it's simply not as effective as it once was. Much like the Antspur Rapier, which has the exact same issues as the same weapon type. Obviously this one has the benefits of its status build up. It is a cool weapon, but the changes are noticeable and you will feel them with thrusting swords. Now let's move up to the C category. Firstly, we have the Dragon Scale Blade, which after 1.07 is in a nice place. It was buffed to have better damage with the Ash of War particularly, and it also lasts a lot longer. Also, as a katana that has lightning damage when buffed up, you're also benefiting from the increased running attack speed and reduced attack recovery time. So again, comboing really well into say more Ash attacks. It's found itself in a nice place. Still, I would like to see further improvements to the lightning and frozen lightning type weapons, as they are quite unique and cool, but the general AR that they have is often quite low. Which brings me to a weapon type, the Scythes or Reapers, represented here by just the scythe. As a weapon type as a whole, you can use these in two-hand or power stance for a good range and powerful hits. Combine it with some of the more unique and powerful multi-hit style Ashes of War, you can get some insane DPS with status, say spinning your weapon over and over and triggering bleed constantly. However, as I've said many times, I find their designs and playstyle a bit dry in Elden Ring, quite uninspired and very repetitive. Though they're certainly worthy of being on the list because of the potential they have, I just wonder if we'll see some more interesting ones in the DLC. Finally for C, we have the Coil Shield, which is obviously represented here by the fist weapon. As shields aren't a weapon, I'm just using this icon as a placeholder. Either way, with the Coil Shield and its 1.07 buffs to the Ash of War, it is quite a reliable, useful shield, especially in obviously a poison build. Snapping out that snake, dealing a bit of damage, and getting that very nasty poison build-up. Usually just one strike is enough, and now they're taking poison damage, be that in PvE or PvP. As nothing has changed, it's still a great option for poison, but as it is just a shield with one attack on the Ash of War, it's just at C. And we're already up to B tier, so let's get into it, starting with Twin Blades as a whole. We have increased running attack speed and reduced attack recovery time, and this comes off the back of a buff in 1.08 where they have the increased speed of some attacks and reduced recovery when using Twin Blades in two hands. So the moveset of these things just gets better and better every patch. And while yeah, it's true, jump attack spam is nerfed a bit in this patch, it's still very powerful, but what's great is that you're much more viable when using just say one single Twin Blade and benefiting from this faster moveset and the better recovery to combo into one another. It's creating a lot of potential for this weapon type, and I do think it's a bit slept on. Much like another weapon that I think is a bit slept on still, the Guardian Swordspear. It's interesting because halberds have been buffed and nerfed this patch. For example, they also benefit from better running attack speed and reduced attack recovery time, but the nerf is a bad one because they've decreased the hitbox size for some of the attacks for halberds. Now this is a unique weapon because it's got a very vertical moveset when used in two-hand, and I really enjoy using these in power stands, catching people out on rolls, say in PvP, and then swapping to two-handing for that sudden vertical combo. That standing combo catches rolls so well. Also, as a halberd, you know, they're not an overly popular weapon type, and they do have some really cool Ashes of War, of course, like Phantom Slash, or powerful ones like Giant's Hunt. It also is a really high scaling dex weapon with high AR for a dex weapon in general. I've been singing this thing's praise since the launch of the game, and I still think it's in a really, really good state, despite the slight nerf to the hitbox size. Another weapon that's still in a good state and technically better this patch is Hand of Malenia, the boss weapon. With the increased running attack speed and reduced attack recovery time on katanas as a whole, this just benefits slightly. But the thing is, I wouldn't never really recommend using this on its own. The Ash of War Waterfowl Dance is obviously an incredible successive attack hit option. You will be knocked out of it with the lack of hyper armor though, super easy in all content, but if you ever get it off, you will burst pretty much anything down at insane speed. That's why I like it in power stance with another katana. Still, it doesn't really compare to other katanas on this list because of its limited nature and lower scaling. Next, we have the Bolt of Gransax, which is a weird place right now. Again, as a spear and thrusting weapon, it's been taking those nerfs. The reduced thrusting weapons counterattack damage in PvP, but the 1.09 spear nerf is nasty too, decreasing the hitbox size for various attacks of this weapon type. Spears were a great one for phantom range, and that is really being pulled back, making it quite hard to catch people in the same ways. However, it does have an incredibly powerful Ash of War that was buffed to be quicker, and you have a bit of hyper armor on it. Great for sniping, great in the open world, a great source of lightning damage without needing any faith. So it's still a brilliant weapon whether you're using just one of them or power stancing them, but it's undeniably taken some hits over the last few patches, so I can't really put it in A at this point. Much like the Cross Naginata, another spear type, which was once incredible when seppuku was at its height. They were like seppuku sticks. With seppuku being nerfed as it is, the reduced thrusting weapons counterattack damage, and now the spear nerf of 1.09, these things are really taking a hit as well. They have a very simple thrusting moveset, which is very monotonous, but still creates quite a lot of pressure in PvP when you're pressuring someone and keeping the running attacks and staying in range of them. So while weaker, I still think they're really good. Finally though, we do have the last weapon for B, and that is fist weapons as a whole. It's a strange one. They've been nerfed slightly in 1.09, decreasing the poise damage of heavy attacks and heavy running attacks specifically, as they were the lowest range option of, say, the close range weapons of daggers, of claws, and fists. Their benefit was poise, and that's been reduced slightly. The thing is, you can still do standing light attacks, which is very important, but you really relied on the running heavy or the running lights. With the running heavy being nerfed in terms of poise, you're going to have a harder time with these things. I think you're kind of forced to use, say, bleed and endure to really get anything out of these in PvP. Of course, in PvE though, you can go to town as long as you're good at punishing right windows. But of the three, I think they're the weakest, but still fairly good. Moving on to A tier then, let's just get right to it, where I'm going to put the daggers at the top here. Daggers in general are fantastic after the buffs of 1.08. Attack speed, attack range, and recovery time has made a major difference to this weapon type, and it really doesn't matter as long as you've got good scaling, there's going to be good potential with these things. Of course, things get crazy when you start running a dagger in bleed, and say the arcane weapon Reduvia, that's one of the best weapons in the game right now in my opinion. Not all daggers are made equal though, they're not all the same, and they still are short range weapons. They do require some finesse, but of the three close range weapons, I do think they're the best right now. Not being touched or nerfed in any way, unlike say the claws, which did have a PvP specific nerf, but I still think are A tier. They've decreased the poise damage of heavy attacks and heavy running attacks again, much like the fists with the claws. In return though, for general changes, they actually had increased damage of claws weapons overall. So if you run say the Raptor's claws, which is the longest range claw option, you're now just benefiting from more damage, even if you're dealing less poise damage. And there are a few ways to run claws in a good way. Status is obviously a top tier pick, be that bleed or a poison or otherwise. With their damage being improved though, the DPS potential is technically better this patch, so they're a lot more competitive with daggers, which is awesome to see. Lastly, for A tier though, I'm going to be very quick on this one because it's the Uchigatana that I'm talking about. These are literally just the Nagakiba, but lighter with shorter range. So I put them in A tier, where Nagakiba is obviously the S tier, because it's just the same thing but with better reach, and that's very important. They're both universally good weapons though, where you can put many different Ashes of War on, whether you're buffing up or whether you're just using direct attacks. Many of the options are going to be in fact top tier picks for both sides of the content, and Katana moveset in general is fantastic and always has been. There's just not a great reason to use the Uchigatana over Nagakiba because you just have less range. But wow, we're already towards the end of the last two picks for S tier, starting with, say, the Scavengers curved swords, which are even better this patch. With 1.09, with curved swords specifically, they've increased running attack speed, the recovery time on various attacks, and they've increased the first attack speed at which it comes out. They were already incredible weapons for the speed at which you could attack, a top tier pick for building status in general. Compared to, say, daggers, they don't attack quite as fast, but they benefit from better range than daggers, of course. These weapons, in particular the Scavenger curved swords, can be bleed machines, even after the power stance stats build up nerf back in a previous patch. With their new and much improved moveset, the threat, especially in PvP, is noticeably better, and I did not expect to see this weapon type get any buffs, and certainly not good ones like these. So yeah, they're in a really good state, easily S tier, much like the last weapon on this list, Bloodhound's Fang, which as a curved greatsword has increased speed and range and recovery time on various attacks. Yes, for some reason these long curved greatswords have better range now, as well as speed of attack. This allows for some incredible combos, and obviously the Bloodhound's Fang has a very powerful, high damage Ash of War. It's easy to argue that this is the best early game weapon, since you can get it right out of the gate, and for many people, it was their main weapon for their first playthrough for good reason. These days, it's simply stronger. I must acknowledge though that this is a very good quality weapon, but as we don't do quality tier lists, it is a fantastic dex option, and deserves to be here, as it is in an incredible state now. But there you have it. This is my 1.09 rankings of the dex weapons. As a reminder, this is the call shield. We're just using a different icon as a placeholder. And otherwise, let me know, is there any weapons you've been trying out this patch that feel really good that maybe should have made it onto this list? But otherwise, I hope this video was useful to you. I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.